Rest in peace to all the men, women, and children who lost their lives on 9/11/2001. Also, rest in peace to all those who have lost and continue to lose their lives due to 9/11-related illnesses. I first want to say that names were changed to protect the employee's identity. Once upon a time, I used to work for the sprinkler company that installed the entire sprinkler and standpipe system at the World Trade Center Memorial Museum. I'll be honest with you, I'm a Catholic. I believe in all that stuff, life after death, good and evil, the whole 9 yards, so, as you could imagine, I was a little skeptical about going to work down at the Trade Center. Especially because it wasn't a 1 or 2 day job, we were going to be there for a while. That place was about to become home base, a graveyard. I heard there was a room in the museum where the unidentified remains are kept. This is exactly how horror stories start. Day 1, the setup, I was paired up with a controls contractor. Just as I said, I'm laying the pipe, and you're finishing it off, we shared a nervous laugh. But that's exactly what was going on. I was running branches off the standpipe. For those who don't know, standpipes are the main risers, the pipes that run vertically through the different floors. At every floor, you have a rig with a drain and an isolation valve. The water comes into your building from the city, up those vertical lines, through the rigs, and then spreads across your floor in the branches, while maintaining a certain pressure. Yup, we installed all of that in the museum. But, they brought me in just to do the branches downstairs. So, they paired me with this guy, the controls contractor, who totally came off like a jerk-off. Didn't seem like too personable of a guy. It didn't matter to me. I wasn't married to him. I did my 8 hours and went home, unless I was able to squeeze some overtime. But the big guy with the big bucks didn't want to pay, go figure. That's another story for another day. A few days went by, and this contractor ended up opening up a little bit. It turns out, the guy wasn't comfortable working in the museum. I guess he was into ghosts and all that stuff, so it creeped him out. Week 1, the bodies room. A week in, we ended up having to work in the bodies room. This is where they keep all the unidentified remains. I was running a branch into there and dropping in a few sprinkler heads. I had 2 of my guys with me. The goal was to bang this out quickly. The first thing I noticed when we got into the room was a bunch of white powder in the corner. Strangest thing I'd ever seen. It didn't look like someone swept it into the corner, it looked like it was dropped there. Weird. I figured I'd ask Mr. Controls about it when I saw him next. I bumped into him the next day. I guess he cut out early the day before. I called out, "Hey, buddy. What's this white powder in the corner of the room over there?" The guy didn't seem like he wanted to talk about it. All he said was, "They're trying to catch footprints." I responded, "Come again. What does that even mean?" He replied, "Exactly what I said. I don't feel like getting into this. I'm trying to do my job and get the hell out of here." They think they've seen bare footprints in the museum and in this area, so they want to see if this dust will be tracked all over the floor. Okay, so that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. Like, is this even reality? We got the job done in 4 weeks. In that time, I didn't see any footprints or hear any more stories. But that was about to change. 5 to 6 years later, the reconnection. Fast forward 5 or 6 years later. I ended up scoring a job at the World Trade Center site again. Working with the sprinkler company wasn't what we normally did in my union, so the job I ended up getting had a slightly different description. A few years went by, and the company hired a new employee. A younger guy, who had actually worked at the museum a few years back. Coincidental how we both ended up in the same department and same spot. It really is a small world. One day, I was talking to the young buck and randomly brought up the footprints. I asked, "Hey bro, anything ever happen with the ghost footprints or something in the museum?" As soon as I brought it up, his face dropped, as if he had seen a ghost, and he responded, "Who told you about that?" I explained that I had worked there years back and told him about the powder, the contractor, and the ghosts. Believe it or not, this little guy pulled out his phone and showed me a damn picture of a bare footprint. It was apparently taken by a porter. Get this, the guy mops the main floor in the museum. I think it was black marble if I'm not mistaken. After he finished mopping, he took a second look to make sure he hit every spot. His eyes locked onto a bare footprint. He snapped a picture of it. The craziest part about this is, he had eyes on the area the whole time and didn't see anyone. I told the young guy, imagine that shit, unbelievable. The return, night shift. About a month later, I got assigned to a night shift for some routine maintenance work. The museum was a different place after dark. It gets so quiet that the silence was almost deafening, which is why I wanted to stay clear of it. One night, I wasn't paying much attention. Money has been tight, so I'm taking all the overtime I can get. I normally work the third shift, but tonight I decided to stay back and catch 8 hours of overtime. I was exhausted because I obviously didn't sleep, since third shift slid right into first shift. For those familiar with the site, I was on the 270 level. Since I was working, not in my usual area, almost robotically, I pushed down button on one of the 3 freight elevators. When those doors opened, the area looked familiar, but I had no idea where I just ended up. I instantly got the feeling of my stomach dropping. I'm in the middle of the museum. It's after hours, there are no overnight museum employees in sight. For some weird reason, I decided to step out of the elevator into this big open area in the lower level of the museum. As soon as I walked 5 feet, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The air felt heavy, and every creak and groan of the building set my nerves on edge. I panned across the open space, looking for someone, anyone, but there was no one in sight. The lights were dim and it was just very eerie. I turned around, shining my flashlight into the darkness, as if I was looking for something. But there was nothing or no one around. Just as soon as I turned around to walk back to the elevator, my brain automatically went into fight or flight mode. I heard 3 slaps, as if someone scurried across the floor. I just got back from a vacation in Florida 2 weeks prior, and the only thing I could think of is it sounded like my feet slapping the marble floor when I came into the hotel lobby from the pool and wasn't wearing slippers. My bare feet slapping the floor. As soon as I made that connection, my nuts felt like they went into my throat. I quickly turned around and pointed my flashlight directly behind me. There was no one in sight. My legs almost stiffened up, feeling like I lost control of my motor skills. I start walking back to the elevator like I couldn't bend my knees, as if I was walking on stilts. With the combination of hearing my heartbeat and my work boots hitting the marble floor, I heard something. The only way I could describe it was like 2 or 3 people whispering very low to each other. I couldn't make out words, it just sounded scratchy. It was loud enough where I could make out whispering, but low enough that I couldn't make out words. I hurried my ass to the elevator because I was fully regretting my curiosity. I instantly started continuously reciting Our Father over and over, as I scurried to the elevator bank, without even considering looking back. I get to the elevator and hit the up button. Just as I expected, those long seconds felt like minutes. My back is now drenched with sweat. I don't hear the elevator moving because I'm assuming someone is holding the door open at ground level. It's something that usually happens. With my luck, it's happening at 2 a.m. where there is only a skeleton crew on site. I say to myself, out of every effing day, this shit has to happen today. As this is going through my head, I hear the gears in the elevator start moving. It gave me a quick, little burst of happiness, but I'm not completely out of the water yet. I stood there with my eyes shut, waiting to hear the ding, indicating the elevator was here. As soon as I hear those damn doors start moving, my eyes quickly spring open and I automatically start walking forward. When I tell you that I must have jumped up 3 feet because my eyes weren't ready for what they locked onto, I'm not exaggerating. I even let out a little yelp when I noticed there was something in the damn elevator which was supposed to be my safe haven. When my brain could compute what was going on, the security guard bursted out laughing. This is when reality smacked me in the face. I say out loud, "Great. You're not a ghost." The security guard responds, "No, I definitely ain't no ghost, but it seems like you seen one." This is where I'll end the story, because I continue to take overtime shifts when they're available, but I stay very, very far away from the museum. And if what I witnessed was the ghosts of the unidentified victims of 9/11, I pray that you find peace and find your way to heaven. Rest in peace. When I first started working at the New World Trade Center, I was partnered up with someone we'll call Baby Powder. I don't want to give away our exact positions, but I was the more senior guy. Baby Powder was still in training, so we were working the day shift together. One afternoon, a call came in through the radio asking us to investigate a leak. 10:04, I responded to Jerry over the radio. Jerry had been with at the trade center for years. He was an older guy, a bit of a ball breaker, but overall okay. He was part of the original crew that started early on. The campus sprawls over multiple acres, 16 to be exact. So, you better make sure you have whatever tools or supplies you need because no one feels like walking back and forth if you forget something. We were tasked with finding a leak coming from a peculiar spot. If I remember correctly, it was some kind of runoff or drain from the subway that was leaking into our space. Navigating the campus can be a nightmare. There are so many stairwells, and they're not just labeled A, B, and C. You have the BJ staircase, the BL staircase, and so on. It definitely gets confusing. Baby Powder said he had an idea where this mystery door, in the stairwell between 2 floors, might be. So, we made our way over. Some time passed, and we finally found the door. It was a heavy, metal, fire-rated door with no doorknob. Instead of a knob, a chain was securing it. Just to paint a picture for you, Baby Powder and I walked through this door, and it looked like a dungeon. It was dirty, humid, and smelled. The walls were unfinished, basically bare bedrock. There are areas of the old World Trade Center that weren't completely destroyed, like the E-train entrance. When you see the tiles go from white to stained tan, those are original. These almost look like the original slurry wall. We walked through the doorway and cut a left. Then, there was a long hallway with rocky walls. When we got to the end, it cut right, and we were at a dead end. That's where the leak was coming from. There was already a ladder set up. Before I could open my mouth to tell Baby Powder what to do, the loudest boom you could imagine happened. It was so loud it almost felt like my skin froze. I know I jumped pretty high, and when I looked at Baby Powder, he was pretty shook. Baby Powder was a nice dude, just seemed like he had a lot going on in life at the time. By the time I could make sense of what happened, I figured it out. It was the door that slammed. But how the hell did it slam? First of all, we definitely secured it. Second, stairwells should be positive pressure, so if anything, the door should have stayed open because it would have been pushed by the positive stairwell pressure. Instead, it was pulled, as if the stairwell was in a vacuum and slammed shut with the force of a hurricane. I looked at Baby Powder, and he looked at me. We may have said, "F this," at the same time and got the hell out of there. I'm not curious enough to go looking for anything. I'm completely content with not knowing about the unknown. The next day, the incident was still on my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to talk to Jerry about it. When I brought it up, his face turned serious. He looked around to make sure no one else was listening and then leaned in closer. While lowering his voice, he said, "I've been here a while and I've never seen anything. Some of the guys say they have, but I haven't. Do you know the feeling you get when you know someone isn't being truthful?" As if he wanted to say something, but maybe if he did, it would make it real since he put it out there. He could have been wanting to convince himself that whatever he's experienced was all in his head. So, I didn't really believe him. Jerry went on to tell me about strange occurrences that others had experienced over the years. Lights flickering on and off for no reason, cold spots in the middle of summer, and even the feeling of being watched when no one else was around. That was a big one. I could attest to that because ask anyone who works at the trade center about fire pump number 2. I guarantee everyone will say the same thing. It just feels busy in there, as if you're not alone. It's hard to explain, it's something you just have to witness. It's also important to note that area was the corner of the original South Tower, I was told. I didn't know what to make of what Jerry said. On one hand, he was a practical guy, not prone to too much exaggeration. On the other hand, the idea of ghosts or spirits haunting the World Trade Center seemed far-fetched because I don't believe in them. But after what Baby Powder and I had experienced, I couldn't dismiss it entirely. A week later, Baby Powder and I were working the night shift for the first time. The campus was eerily quiet after dark, the kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of every little sound. It was wintertime, so some of the usual mechanical equipment was offline. We were assigned to check on some equipment in one of the older sections of the complex that was partially original. I ended up telling Baby Powder and the other employee, "Go check it out and call me if you need help." I'm going to stay back and just close out some work orders. It's no surprise that many people believe the World Trade Center site is haunted. There were numerous reports of strange occurrences, both from workers and visitors. Some believed that the spirits of those who lost their lives on 9/11 still lingered, unable to move on. But, about all of that. I'm not sure what the explanation is. Obviously the only thing I'm trying to not think about, is the only thing I can think about, that door slamming just kept weighing on me. At this point, I'm alone. I receive a call from baby and aunt. They were going to get food, and asked me if I wanted anything. I responded, sure, get me a few slices. We hang up and I go back to thinking about the incident that happened previously, with the door slamming. I wasn't sure what to believe at that point or how to even make sense of it. All I knew was, that something strange happened and I just don't have the answers. It was definitely something that defied logic and reason. I'd say, maybe 10 to 15 minutes had passed, and I could hear a group of keys jingling on key rings, as if a small group was walking towards the offices. I was starving at that point, so that was a good sign. The only thing was, how the hell did they get from the hub, which is an area of the campus, to the pizzeria, then back so quickly? As I'm sitting there anticipating them walking through the door any second, no one does. I'm thinking they's trying to F with me, so I get up to try and scare them. I'm hiding behind these huge bomb-proof doors waiting to jump out, except, no one walks through the door. So I pop out and yell, alright, mother effers, and walk out into the open. The area we are in is the size of a football field, filled with specific equipment. It's a plant of some kind. Believe it or not, there was no one there. At that point, I just shot back to the offices and stayed there. I didn't even bother mentioning anything to the guys when they got back. I had 2 experiences within the last 2 weeks, and it was more than I needed in a lifetime. Over the next few years that I worked there, I didn't encounter anything else. I don't know what happened those 2 weeks, but it was enough to scare the shit out of me. I did some work at the river water pump station down at the World Trade Center. If you don't know, buildings normally have those things on the roofs called cooling towers. Many people probably think they're just air conditioners. You'd only be half wrong if you thought that. They're not the actual air conditioner but just a part of the system. Imagine the noise your refrigerator makes, that low hum and the warm air it blows out from the back. That's essentially what a cooling tower does for a building's refrigeration and comfort cooling system. The World Trade Center works differently. The original Twin Towers didn't have cooling towers either. Instead, they used the cold, dark, radioactive waters of the Hudson River to remove the heat from their refrigeration system. Just kidding about the radioactive part, but I have seen some weird species of alien-like fish. I digress. This meant my first job there was deep in the bowels of the building, at the river water pump station. Descending into that station felt like entering another world. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, and the atmosphere heavier. It was a labyrinth of steel and concrete, reminiscent of a Soviet-era missile silo, an eerie relic hidden beneath the bustling city above. Years later, I took a job as a vendor for the World Trade Center campus. I spent a lot of time in their chiller plant, specifically in the main office, which became a second home of sorts. One Friday afternoon in the summer, I found myself there, needing to plug in some of my equipment. The office had a long table lined with computers, resembling a makeshift command center. Underneath, power cubs and outlets were hidden from sight. I was on all fours, half my body buried under the table, searching for an outlet. Suddenly, I heard footsteps echoing down the hallway, approaching the office. A man in a suit walked in. This was unusual since the regulars here were blue-collar guys in uniforms. I kept quiet, assuming he was a boss. But then, the footsteps stopped abruptly. I turned around, expecting to see the man standing there. All I could see were black suit pants and a briefcase, his presence looming over me. "Hey, how's it going, buddy? I'll be out in a second, just trying to plug my computer in," I called out. No response. The millisecond I plugged my charger in, the footsteps resumed, walking away from me. There was a data closet in the corner, obscured by a data rack from where I was. Expecting to see the men walk into the closet, I waited for the sound of the door opening. But there was nothing. "Sir," I called out, crawling out from under the table. "Sir," I repeated, louder this time. I approached the closet door, my heart pounding. I pushed it open, and was greeted only by the warm hum of the data racks in a cold room. No one was there. I quickly gathered my things, my heart racing. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized I was utterly alone. I didn't return to the chiller plant again, leaving the incident and its unnerving implications behind me. To this day, I don't know who, or what, I encountered in that office, and I'd prefer to keep it that way.